I thought I'd do a video on something, a more recent blog post this time, um, which is kind of the write up I did on singular genomics, just reviewing recent presentation and some other things that have been going on because someone reached out and said, "Hey, what do you think about Singular? You wrote about them before. Have you seen what's been happening with their share price, which has been tanking?" They did an IPO, and clearly the market has not responded very well. So their price is down, like hovering around $1, or was a couple of days ago anyway. And someone was saying that, well, if they sink below $1 for like a couple of weeks, they'll get delisted. So that kind of sucks. And that's kind of a bit of a surprise to me because it's like it didn't seem that bad. Oh, and the market cap was like 75 million. So that's so you're kind of valuing this company with a working DNA sequencing platform at 75 million, which seems like a super low valuation for a platform that works, where you could do useful applications, and is kind of at least in terms of data quality, is competitive with Illumina, and that's a concern not just for Singular but for all the other kind of Illumina. I get in trouble for saying clone, but Illumina-like sequencing platforms that have similar characteristics and are based on similar optical approaches. Because if that's not going to play in the market, if you've no way to play on cost, it's going to be an issue for all of them. And 75 million seems very low. I think, if I remember correctly, they've got maybe 200 million, 100 to 200 million in the bank. So they're being valued less than that. So I thought, okay, let's go and have a look and see what's going on. And this is not a deep dive really, this is just me going and having a look. There's a lot more information in the Substack post that is linked below. If you want this kind of information, please consider a free subscription to the Substack. Free subscriptions also help me out, not just paid ones. So let's have a look. So I think this video also, there was a new presentation which came out only a few days ago, where they have public information about the instrument cost and the consumables cost. 350k instrument, which is quite similar to like a NextSeq 2000 and Illumina NextSeq 2000, which is obviously the instrument that dominates this market for this segment, this kind of mid-range instrument segment, which is what pretty much everyone who's releasing a new sequencer now is going for. And then $150 lanes, which we'll get a bit more information on later, but it's pretty reasonable pricing. So they've got various flow cell models, different kinds of flow cells and the stuff, but it tops out at this $1,000 flow cell, which produces, if I remember, 400 million reads, and that's quite, on first glance, that's fairly compelling, because the prices I looked at for NextSeq 2000 flow cells were like $4,000 for that. For that level of kind of throughput. So the question is, well, have they always had this pricing, or are they now kind of pushing down pricing in order to compete? Or and because they've just done that, this presentation is just from a few days ago, and the market is yet to respond, or is there something else going on? I suspect probably there's something else going on, isn't there? If you look at the revenue, I think this is from the Q1 report. The revenue was from, I think this is recognized from 3 instruments. So that would be at a slight discount off that list price. what's worrying here. So this has got to be all instrument revenue as far as I can tell. Probably almost no consumable component here, but it's not like they're selling a high margin instrument. They're selling it almost at cost, which is also similar if you look at Illumina reports. Generally, if you kind of run the numbers, it looks like Illumina sell instruments at cost as well, which is a little bit surprising to me. But they don't have room to push down the instrument cost and kind of go after maybe like the MySeq market with a NextSeq class instrument. That doesn't seem to be an option here. In terms of pull through on these kind of instruments, so the thing I don't have on the slides actually is it looks like from Q1 and the end of year reports from last year, it looked like about less than 10 instruments in total placed, probably about 5 for Q1 up to the end of Q1. So I don't know what's happened since then. Perhaps we'll find out soon, but we don't know. Pull through on these instruments based on Illumina pull through should be pretty good. So this is from one of Illumina's reports, and I think these are like annual numbers. So if you buy NextSeq 2000, the average user is spending about 130,000 in reagents. So that's a $300,000 instrument, and then every year you get kind of 100,000 in like very high margin. Should be very high margin consumables sales. So the idea would be that's presumably why Singular and Element and other folks are going after this mid-range kind of thing. It's like, it looks good because you get a pretty good pull through, and then we can compete on cost, which those numbers kind of suggest that Singular are trying to compete on cost, and if we sell like a few hundred instruments, we'll be okay. Singular's burn seems to be about 20 million a year. A few hundred instruments with this kind of pull through would at least cover that burn, and then maybe you could expand from that. So why have they only sold 5 odd instruments? Let's not talk about this slide just yet, but you could read it. But I imagine kind of what might be happening is that actually NextSeq users are not the most cost sensitive. So if you want the cheapest sequencing, you're running a core facility, running your instruments 24 hours a day. You buy the big instruments, you buy the NovaSeq class instruments, and then if you go to those instruments. To me, it didn't look like the Singular pricing was cheap anymore. It's competitive, but it didn't look cheap. So for that reason, it's like, well, you're a user, you're looking to buy an instrument, and you're kind of like, well, I don't know if Singular is even going to keep going in the long term. Look at their share price. I'll just buy like an Illumina NextSeq, and I don't care that the runs are more expensive, because it's not like I spend a huge amount of money. It's more important to me that my single NextSeq is reliable, and I can get the research done that I need to get done. So perhaps that's the reason. And I mentioned that past the paywall in in the Substack post. I think there are a few other little things, bits and bobs. There's some other bits of interesting technology. So I'm kind of ambivalent on whether I would say like the upside or the downside wins out with Singular, because 75 million is an incredibly low valuation, and there are certainly exits that I could see as viable for the company that would be far higher than that. So it is surprising to me. Looking elsewhere, I always look through the Glassdoor reviews, and I always like to read the negative reviews, partly because they're more fun generally, but also I think regardless of what personal gripes individuals might have, Um, uh, you can build a picture from negative reviews about kind of what's going on in the company. So this one describes them as just a cheap Illumina knockoff. Like, I wouldn't like. I mean, there's what's wrong with being an Illumina knockoff. It's okay, but you just like you're not going to be doing like super innovative technology development. You're just going to be trying to execute well and kind of going for like we're just going to be Illumina on cost, and we're going to build a logistically sound kind of system. I feel like if you're going to do that, you should have hit a lower cost of goods on your instrument. You should have like tried to cost optimize that a bit more. And it does feel like you should be able to build a next C class instrument for less money than that. But there's a lot of talk about like the innovative kind of individuals leaving the company and there being a lot of siloing and stuff like that. Personally, I wish Singular well. I think it would be sad if they disappeared as an entity. I think the competition in the market is welcome and should drive down Illumina pricing. So I hope they keep going, and I hope the entity kind of continues to exist for in whatever form and sequencing technology that they've developed keeps moving forward. They're going to face increasing competition from Chinese players as well, as I've mentioned on the Substack. The 7 or 8 kind of Chinese sequencing startups that are coming out with very similar to Illumina-like platforms as well will also provide more competition. But I still think there's hope for Singular. There are potential exits which would allow the technology to keep moving. So there we go.